I was a kid when the Home Alone movies were coming out, when they were popular, when they were really big and they've lived on and they've really stood the test of time. So as someone who grew up with this film and the original Home Alone, I wanted to talk about why I think critics missed on this one, why I think both films, this one was rated less highly overall by critics, but why I think that they were reticent to give either film a pass, even though they've become these sort of timeless movies that everyone's seen, and where I think they went right and wrong. And really, I think the hatred by critics for films like this sometimes makes viewers of all kinds of mainstream films feel like what critics have to say isn't very good, and that's a shame because critics are so often, good voices for great films. And so I will be referencing some other films that are critically acclaimed and just trying to give you my thoughts as someone who likes a lot of art films, a lot of non-English films, a lot of different kinds of films. I thought it might be useful. So what I think was the biggest issue that kind of touches on every other issue that a critic might have is I think they took this film a little too literally, where I think some people who might find it kind of dumb are looking at the structure, the purpose, the reason for the existence of the film. This is an intelligent child's Christmas fantasy playing out in a realistic form. This is not supposed to be a true story or even a close to true story of a child who has been left alone. This is how a young man might perceive events like this would play out, but in the way the film's portrayed makes it seem more plausible and realistic, and I think that line is difficult for some viewers to watch. And I wanted to compare this to something that used to bother me. I used to really struggle with David Lynch films, but the more I've watched them, the more I've realized you kind of need to embrace them with a certain mindset. When I sit down to a David Lynch film, such as Mulholland Drive here, I expect that I'm going to be in the middle of a nightmare. Stylistically, narratively, it's going to have the ebb and flow of a dream. In other words, I can't look at the film in totally realistic terms or even logical terms. I have to let the experience come to me. I have to be a part of it. I have to be along for the ride. Home Alone 2 is actually, and so is Home Alone 1, but especially Home Alone 2, is very much like that. See, Kevin, the conflict is really that Kevin does not want to go to a place like Florida where he can't get the true Christmas experience. And by the way, as I'm talking about this, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you've seen Home Alone 1, Home Alone 2, because I will be spoiling and referencing both. But, as I was saying, I don't think the film is so much about Kevin getting, away from Harry and Marv or his parents. Those are all parts of the conflict, but the real conflict is that Kevin wants what Christmas should be to be what Christmas should be. That's evident from the very beginning in those opening moments when even the Christmas song is kind of ruined, right? His song's kind of ruined. And I think sometimes people are just a little too grown up with how they perceive this film. Now I'm going to talk about a film that is highly regarded, that I love, that I think has some real striking similarities. If you follow my channel at all, you'll occasionally hear about the great Japanese filmmaker Yasujiro Ozu, who directed this wonderful comedy, a lighthearted take on the challenges of intergenerational relationships. This is called Good Morning. It tells the story of two young boys who stop speaking in protest after their parents refuse to buy a television set. Doesn't that sound kind of like the world of Home Alone? With Kevin being obsessed with his little recorder and using the technology and the gadgets and so forth throughout the film. This is the kind of thing that matters to a child. Does my TV work? Do I have a TV? Does the TV work in my room? Those things matter. The satire in that film concerning, commercialization and products and so forth, that is actually all over Home Alone 2. Consider when Kevin finally does get to the hotel, for example. The hotel's an enemy. in the film. The greed that the hotel symbolizes is part of the problem. See, in Home Alone 2, the stakes are all raised from Home Alone 1. No longer is this Kevin defending his house, the McAllister family house. Now he's defending against two criminals trying to rob other children. He's defending his own life. And the hotel, much like The Shining, the Stanley Hotel, it was shot. I mean, that's where it was shot, but part of it. But much like that, the hotel is a symbol of greed and avarice, and the hotel tries to even overtake him, much like it does Danny Torrance in The Shining. So there's a similarity there. And so a good sequel will always raise the stakes. The Godfather 2 did that. With The Godfather, you have, instead of having one or two conflicts, you kind of expand the conflict outside of the family. And this film does that as well. And beyond that, I'm impressed consistently with how New York City is shot in this. This feels like a major tourist destination from the perspective, especially of a child. Kevin's not out there trying to find the hip spots in another neighborhood like Dumbo. He's trying to hit the tourist spots and get stuff and get cheese pizza and get the coolest toys because he wants to be in the Big Apple and he wants to be there in a big way and he wants to enjoy himself. But as the structure of his life without his parents starts to fail, like all children, he wants that back. Similar to Hal. And, it's what's interesting to me as a teacher, kids think at first that they might want the free reign, and then when reality hits in, no, they want the structure back of their family. And that's a major part of the plot again. But it all comes back to Kevin really wanting Christmas to be what it means to him. And he finds it in his own way, despite the challenges. He finds it in Brenda Fricker, who is just a wonderfully lovely character in this film. A really underrated, wholesome, just touching character. She's a woman who lives out in the... She almost is like a witch, right? She has all these different birds around her gathering, and she's a little scary, but in a positive light, in a positive way. She loves music. You can see that she has a love for entertainment and culture. And that is such an inspiration for Kevin. And the humanity and the heart behind that character and her wonderful performance, I think that is something special in this film. Like Yasujiro Ozu, who I mentioned, has characters like this, right? He has characters that are so heartwarming. Characters who share compassion and joy and beauty. And I think it makes it great. She reminds me a little bit. I pulled this film off my shelf. Some of you who follow my channel love Inventors and Perfect Days. The simplicity of walking around as this man does with a camera, taking pictures, enjoying nature, living with the least amount of stuff possible and being happy despite that, as opposed to Kevin, who can't be happy in a luxurious hotel at times. The film even does something clever that I kind of noticed in this last watch. If you remember from the first film, Home Alone, we have Old Man Marley. I believe that's his name, right? He's the South Bend Shovel Slayer. I didn't know for a long time what that was referencing, but of course, South Bend is close to Chicago. And this time, instead of an anti-hero, we have Mr. Duncan, who is also an older man, sort of stand-in patriarch. But in this film, he's warm, he's tender, he's giving, and he presents another reason for Kevin to return to structure and family and love and the things Christmas is actually about, that he actually misses. And he learns that as he goes. Now, I think the big problem that a lot of folks have, especially in the first one, who are looking at this from a critical perspective, is the cartoonish violence that you get, especially in Home Alone 2. And I think that's it does in some ways make the film a little less watchable as an adult, I will admit that. But I think it's kind of important to the structure of the story. Again, this is Kevin's vision. This is Kevin's mindset. This is Kevin's understanding of what New York City is like being alone. I know that's not exactly literal or complete realism, and I know it can be kind of tough to wrap your conscious mind around that, but I really think that's what's going on. So, For example, when that big bar thing flies off and hits Harry and Marv and they fall down and it like Kevin, cuts it and it hits them, of course that would kill them in real life. Of course a brick falling from a building would. But this is a kid who's growing up on Looney Tunes, okay? This is a kid who understands the world in this way. He doesn't understand the full consequences of actions yet. Let me say that again. He does not understand the full consequences of actions, nor does the film, in my opinion, very purposefully. So when a brick goes flying and it should just be game over for Joe Pesci, it isn't. For adults, for us, a lot more of the comedy on that end has to do with the timing, and Daniel Stern's hilarious with his timing. Okay? Harry, I've reached the top. That still cracks me up, and then he falls over. We know it's not real. For us, it's like an old silent film with Buster Keaton, right? It's not supposed to be that for us. That part of the film isn't there as much for us as it is for the kids. But Joe Pesci, I mean, he's like the personification of all evil in the city. All the greed, all the nastiness, the dirtiness, even to something like the concept of sticky bandits. That's a child's fantasy of what a bandit might be like. It's not supposed to be that literal, in my opinion. And if you can watch it in that way, I think you can appreciate it a whole lot more. Finally, something that's really worth sharing here. The music in this film. John Williams, traditional Christmas songs all over the place. It's very much a film that wants you to have fun with the spirit and the idea of Christmas, to the point that the film even says, like, I'm just going to stick a big tree at the end and let you go into that famous location in New York, and I'm going to put the tree right here, and I'm going to have the mother and the son reunite under it, because it's a fun image. It's a fun celebration of Christmas and holiday cheer. And there is that awesome song from sung by Darlene Love about being alone on Christmas that juxtaposes with Kevin, driving across the bridge or riding across the bridge. In short, this film is something of a fantasy. It is not supposed to be that realistic. And I have seen other Christmas movies that bend reality, plenty of them do, that aren't as good. Sometimes films do better with the fantasy, like It's a Wonderful Life is probably the best example of this. There are other films like The Phantom Carriage that do a good job with that as well, but for what this is, an accessible, entertaining film with a lot of heart, with a real reason to exist, I've always enjoyed it. And most of all, this film, watching Kevin grow up and learn and mature, and watching his family grow up and learn and mature, is so important, I think, for young kids to see. Instead of being like one of the bad guys at the hotel who's just out to make a quick tip or a quick buck or try to exploit the next person, and that hotel is full of bad guys, why not be someone who wants to give money and resources to children's hospitals at Christmas? Those are some of my thoughts about what makes about Tim. I was about to say those are some of my thoughts about what makes the film great, and I wanted to mention that Tim Curry's hilarious in it, so it kind of came out wrong, but there you go. Great actor. Anyway, if you like the video and you want to click a thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. And share your thoughts, especially if you disagree with me. Tell me, nah, Home Alone 2 is bad. I would love to hear a lot of different opinions on that, or why you do like that or the first one. Anyway, check out more of my videos related to some of these criterions if you would, on Coding the Cinema, and subscribe.